Hello, happy 1st of March. I'm late, but that's fine. I'm writing my thesis right now. I have a reason to be late. This is my list. These are 4 of the books I read. Let's go. So I read mostly audiobooks. I listened to. Weird. Anyway, altogether, I listened to, consumed 11 books that I all tracked on Goodreads because I'm great. You know what? We're starting with all the thesis books because then you can just skip them if you're not interested. Maybe to avoid confusion, I'm writing my thesis about the Christian evangelical, no, I can't say that word anyway, about the Christian movement of purity culture in America. So, this one, I don't know, somewhere there, whatever. It's called Shameless, A Sexual Revolution by Nadia Bolz-Weber. I don't rate it, I read 4 books for my thesis this month, and I don't give star ratings to any of those because I kind of read them for a different reason, so it seems mean to rate them. But this is a book that I will definitely probably read again for personal reasons, as a personal interest, because I really liked her writing style, I really liked the information I was getting, and I can totally see myself reading another one of her books. Next book is this one. It's called The Purity Myth by Jessica Valenti. This was an interesting one because I had the feeling she was very, very angry when she wrote this book, which I kind of get because I feel like the topic in general, like virginity and how we view sex and all that, is kind of a heated topic, no pun intended, but I feel like she didn't really help her cause by being so snarky. It was hard for me to get through because it's like there's an extreme, like there's this line, and this is the extreme where you are so feminist that everything you say is snarky and manages the devil. And this is the other extreme where everything is just so anti-feminist that, yeah. So anyway, this was on this end. Far back on over there. It was very extreme, and I feel like it was so harsh that it lost a bit of its scientific value or scientific outcome. I don't really know. So she had an approach that was very scientific, and most of the things she said, or what's the word for that? I don't know. Anyway, so most of her arguments were probably based on a scientific reasoning, but then she had also a lot of very snarky comments, as I said, that kind of devalued all the work that she put into her scientific research. So, for example, footnotes. In this book, it was, wow. So usually, I don't know everything, but as I learned it, you have footnotes you make like an assumption, or you say something in your big text, and then you either want to clarify further what you meant by that, and then you make a footnote, or you make a footnote to tell the reader where this information is from. So, for example, I would say cows have been brown until the 19th century. Random, weird, not true. But then I would make a footnote and say, got that from this and this source, like Farmers Association of the 19th century. And what she did was she just had footnotes that were just snarky comments. Like, for example, she would say, cows have been brown until the 19th century. And then she would make a footnote, and the footnote would say, because cows suck, suckers. And it was just a bit weird to read. Because throughout reading, I was always like, can I use that? Because it seems just so mean. I cannot say that. Like, I can't prove she's right. So it was a bit weird to use for my thesis, and it made me a bit uneasy because there was so much wrath in it that I felt I was getting uneasy. Like, I mean, feminist topics are important, and I would call myself a feminist, but I don't know. I feel like it's a spectrum, and yeah, so much. I'm really glad I don't have to write that book, because I was getting interesting information that I would really like to use, but the snarky comments just didn't sit well with me, so I don't think I'm going to read this book again. Also, someone in Goodreads in a review said that probably this book is written for people who are already extreme feminists and who already have the opinion that she has writing this book, and who just look for books or sources to further increase their own opinion, which is a weird reason to read a scientific book. Like, I don't think if you were just open about learning something that you're not necessarily agree with yet, you would not agree with it after reading that book, because if you're not on her side, this book just spans pages and pages screaming in your face, "You're wrong, sucker!" So, I don't know, it's kind of... Anyway, next book. This one. Talking Back to Purity Culture by Rachel Joy Welcher. So interesting, because this one is on the other side of the spectrum. So we have basically, it's like this. This was too extreme feminist. This was too less feminist for me. I don't know. It was so strange, because I don't know, I got this book and it said Talking Back to Purity Culture. So I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a strong approach. And I was in a phase where I was looking for books that have a strong approach. And then I wasn't getting that. I was like, I mean, she is against purity culture. She says that. She aligns with the purity message thus far, that she says the right thing, or God wants you to wait until marriage to have sex, which is the same thing the purity culture movement says. She's just against the teachings that the purity culture uses. So it was a bit weird for me, probably because I read those books parallel to each other. So I was reading two very extreme views at the same time, and they were different extremes, as I said, spectrum. And it was making me uneasy in the weirdest way possible. But yeah, Rachel Joy Welcher is a Christian author, and she obviously tries to argue a Christian viewpoint. The problem I have with all those books, and I'm finding this out while I'm writing my thesis, is that I always think I'm reading it because I kind of have an opinion and I'm open to other opinions, and I'm writing my thesis about it, and I kind of know how to read in a scientific way and just take it all with a grain of salt. But there are so many people who don't know how to do that, and who read those books as self-help books just because, oh, it's written by a Christian, so I can just read it and it's probably true and I don't have to question it, which is obviously not her fault, but still it kind of worries me, because I want I don't want them to feel like the way they live is wrong, because maybe it isn't. You have to find that out for yourself. You have to do your own research. Yeah, it's weird. It made me a bit uneasy. Like, there was this one passage, I was totally on board with her for a few pages, and then there was this passage, and it wasn't really a topic on its own. It was just like random side note. If my kid's going to be homosexual, I'm gonna tell them they're sinners, but I still loved it. And then she just went on with her rambling, like, with the topic. It was all fine. It was just like a side note, and I was like, wait a second, what? You're not going to tell that to your kids, right? You don't say that. I was sitting there very flabbergasted, like, don't just say that in a side note. Don't break your kids like that. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna read that book again, because it made me mad at a lot of the times that I was reading it. So those two books are just too extreme for me. I had to read them for my thesis, because it's important to also read extreme viewpoints for that, to then get the pendulum somewhere in the middle. But it was, no, not for me. So then the book that kind of saved my whole reading experience last month, the reading experience for my thesis at least, was this one, Pure by Linda K. Klein. So this book is basically scientific research plus a whole as lot of interviews with a whole as different people from all over the country. And personally, I really like that. I, however, read some reviews on Goodreads who were confused by the time jumps, like, she doesn't tell her story necessarily in a chronological order. She's just like, well, this is the topic right now, this is what I experienced connecting to this topic, and here's interviews how other people experienced it. And I got that kind of rhythm very fast. I caught on, and then I was in it. It was really good for me. It was especially interesting to read from so many different people, and I feel like people who have been shamed by the purity movement or who grew up in it might find a lot of consolation in it, and might get the feeling that they're not alone. And I feel like this can be very wholesome for a lot of people, but I also get that people were confused reading it. For me personally, as I said, it wasn't a problem. It was really chill to read that book, especially after I read the two extreme books. It was just very, because I didn't have the feeling she was screaming in my face, and I also didn't have the feeling she was just passing people by as she went. She was very respectful through all of her arguments. Even people who hurt her were like handled very respectfully. And yeah, this was my favorite book, together with Shameless, from all the ones I read as a whole. So I read a whole lot of articles, and I read a whole lot of books that I only read a few pages of, but I don't include them here because this is not a video about my thesis, but about books that I read in a whole. And those were 11. Those were the 4 for my thesis, and now we're coming to the books that I read just for fun. So, okay, the books I read for fun. I was on a thriller run this month. I have no idea why, but I read so many teen thrillers. It was, I don't know. So there is a German book series. It is called the Strawberry Picker series. So the first book in the series is called the Strawberry Picker. I read that when I was 16. I remember liking it, meh. But I remember loving the second and the third book in the series. So I just started, because I already knew it, started by reading the second book. which is this one, and it's called Der Mädchenmaler, which translates to Painter of Girls, maybe. It's about, so the first book in the series, The Strawberry Picker, is about Jette and her friend Merle, and they're living in a flat share, and their third friend in the flat share, Caro, she gets murdered, and then they basically want to hunt her killer, doesn't matter. But in the second book, The Painter of Girls, they try to rent out Caro's room, and they always compare girls who would look at the room with Caro, so they want a boy. They find Mike. Mike comes with his girlfriend. His girlfriend is called Ilka. I love that name. Just a side note, it's such a cool name. And Ilka has a secret past, so they're together for 3 years. She didn't really tell him anything about it. They haven't slept with each other yet because she always gets panicky when they are close to do it. And then she vanishes, and Mike is like, okay, she would never run away. Something happened. And basically Mike and the two girls from the flat share try to find her, and Jette, who is like the main person in the book, gets herself in trouble. Like, I think this series has 7 books now, and it's like weird that she always gets herself in situations like these that are kind of seldom, and she just catches every one of them. It's a bit weird. But yeah, the things we know from the beginning, who did it, and since we kind of also know the reason why they did it, because we have like throwback chapters, it wasn't as interesting as I remembered it to be, probably because I'm 10 years older now. But yeah, I don't know, it was a whole lot of rambling and a whole lot of perspectives I didn't need. And to be honest, I skipped over some passages that were just rambling about coffee and writing and stuff. They're not really something to do with the story. And then when it got interesting, like the last 2 pages, where it was like the action was in full-on blast, it was just over, like, and this was not fun. And I was like, wait, what? It's over? I just read 400 pages of that, and now it's okay. I missed so much. But yeah, I guess everyone is fine, so whatever. The third book in the series is called Collector of Shards, and I started this, but I don't include it here because I didn't finish it, and I probably won't finish it in March either. I tell you later why. So I'm gonna just tell you about it in April, but Goodreads reviews say that it has the same problem, like with the really short end and a whole lot of rambling beforehand, so I don't know. Yeah, so those are all the physical books I have read and I have around. So let's get back to the list. Yes, then I read All These Beautiful Strangers by Elizabeth Clayforth. Good thing I discovered that you can sync your ebooks on Kindle with your audiobooks on Audible, which didn't work all the time, but it mostly worked, and it was fun because then it basically, if you read till page 210, then your audiobook skips to that page automatically, so you just can go on from where you left off. This is kind of cool. The book, however, was a bit boring and it was again multi-perspectives, and it was so, I think I just thought it would be something else and it wasn't, and I wouldn't want to read it again. It was I was skipping to, no, I wasn't skipping, but I wanted to skip a lot of views because it seemed not that important. And the main character, again, she was so unsympathetic, and I don't know. I think I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was okay. If you want to read it, go for it. It's not like problematic in any sense. It was just very meh. So then I started a series, a thriller series that I didn't know was a series when I had the first book. It's called Stacks by M.A. Bennett. I thought he's a guy. She's not. This was fun. It was British, and I enjoyed the main character, which was really cool after what I've been through with all the other books and the other characters. It was really fun, and she's smart and funny and witty, and I really liked her. The series in the end got a bit unrealistic, and it's not done. I read 3 books. The 4th is coming out in summer. I'm gonna read that because, I don't know, the audiobook was fun, so, but yeah, it's basically about this very old school where every technology is banned, and the cool people, like the clique, who is the leader clique if you want, they don't use any technology. And it's so strange because I don't know, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so it's about Creer. Creer's the main character that I liked, and she gets an invitation to this mansion of this guy who is from the leader clique, and since she doesn't have any friends, she thinks, oh yeah, why not, let's go. She then goes and becomes the target of a hunting spree. Like, it's hunting, shooting, fishing, and they basically hunt, fish, and shoot humans, and then I have playbooks. It's a game if you want. I found it a bit strange that no one found that weird so far. Like, no one died, but still, it wasn't unrealistic in a irritating way, more in a really it's weird but kind of fun to listen to way. So I enjoyed the first book. I think I gave it 4 stars. The second book was then again a little bit, why would you go back? Like, there's no reason to go back to the place where you have been hunted, shooted, and fished. But they do, and then I was a bit weirded out by that. Also, I think the author planned to have a villain and then started liking her villain, and then she made him good again, and we never really got an explanation. So he fall off a cliff. Like, ledges and cliffs, what is it with that? And it is very much said a lot of the times that he couldn't have survived that, but for some reason he did survive it, and he doesn't have a reason to change because nothing made him change. I don't know, it's not I don't know, for me it's not enough to meet this queer character and be like, oh, I like you, maybe I should change my ways. Yeah, that was a bit strange, but I really liked the whole British aspect, and it was fun listening to, especially the second book was about theatre and an old play, and it was really cool. They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman, and that was a little bit strange. So I don't have a 5-star book this month, which is a bit sad, but I think the highest rated book would be 4.5 stars, and it would be the British series, one of those books. But yeah, I wasn't blown away this month. They Wish They Were Us is about a clique called Players and initiation ceremonies and all that, and now they're seniors and they want to change stuff because they were kind of traumatized by their own initiation, and then they don't change it, and she quits the Players, but her brother doesn't, and everything falls apart. And also there was this girl who was killed 2 years ago. She was her best friend, yeah, I think. Oh, spoilers, by the way. And the guy she's in love with killed her, which we find out at the end. Like, I was on a hunch all the time. I was like, oh yeah, probably he did it. He doesn't. I don't know. It was very cliche on one hand and very really on the other hand. So, but yeah, it was okay. It was good. I'm just a bit salty that I didn't have a 5-star book this month. So now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is March. You are probably not getting a wrap-up for March because I plan to read only one book. I am on a buddy read that I probably mentioned it before. We are reading A Little Life by Hanya Yanagara, or however you say her name. And it's quite a thick book, and also we have planned it exactly for 1 month, and I think it will probably, I saw reading vlogs about it, it will probably crush me, so I just don't plan any other books for this month. So you're not getting a wrap-up, but you're getting a reading vlog for this book. We'll see how this goes. So then I read another German book this month. If you're not interested because you can't read German books because of the language barrier, you can basically leave. I mean, I discuss it in English, but you probably aren't able to read it yourself, so why bother? If you still want to stay, great for me. See you in a sec. So yes, gosh, then I read another German book called Was geschah mit Femke Star. Translate to What Happened to Femke Star. It's just funny because it rhymes in German. It's not translated because it's very new. I think it came out this or last year. It's by Kerstin Rukik. She usually writes fantasy, I think. I had to Google it because the book is marketed as a thriller, and it's just so weird and confusing that I had to Google what she usually writes because it didn't seem that she were up for writing a thriller. And it is about two best friends, Anouk and Femke, and something happens when they are 13, like they are like sisters, very, very, very close, and then the friendship just breaks. And then this is what we know before, and like it's not a prologue, but it's kind of a prologue, so we got this information. And then 3 years later, when they're both 16 or so, they meet up. So we have the perspective of Anouk, who is the betrayed friend, whatever, and Femke texts her or calls her and wants to meet up. So she meets up with her, doesn't really want to meet up with her. I don't really know why. I'm so confused. Anyway, I tell you what I got. Take it with a grain of salt because I'm not sure that I understood it, and you might want to watch another review to it because I know a lot of people loved it. I gave it 1 star. I'm going to tell you why, but if you want to give it a shot, go for it. Conveniently, they meet up on a ledge, and books on ledges these days, I don't know, I'm on a run. And Femke tries to hug Anouk. Anouk doesn't want to hug her, pushes her back. Femke stumbles backwards, falls down the ledge and dies. Then we get the most disgusting and lengthy description of a weekend afterwards, where Anouk, who lives by herself because her sister doesn't care, doesn't call the police, doesn't call her friends, doesn't tell anyone. She gets very sick, she gets like a fever, and her skin is ripping apart, and then she has like this very big skin parts that just fall off her body. It's so disgusting. And I know this book had a trigger warning for sexual assault, but it did not have a trigger warning for that, and it was making me sick. Long story short, she turns into Femke, like physically, and this is when I first thought, okay, what kind of books does this author usually write? Because it was just not a thriller thing. So I thought, okay, maybe she feels so guilty that she got like a psychosis and she's just imagining it. And then she met with a friend of hers and she actually turned into Femke. So because a friend was like, oh, where's Anouk? You are Femke. And Anouk was like, no, I'm not. I know there is an explanation at the end. I'm going to tell you because people will probably call me out on it. But to be honest, if I read 500 pages in the head of someone who just turned into their best friend after killing them and is very confused about everything, then I am very confused about everything and I need information. It is possible to give the reader information that the main character doesn't have yet, but we just didn't get that, and it made me so mad. At a certain point I was just like, come on. You know what? Trigger warning for sexual assault, rape, group rape, is that a word? I don't know. This is what I'm going to talk about in the next section, so if you didn't skip before, skip now if this is something that makes you unwell. The detail that went into describing those rape scenes over and over again, because Femke wasn't just raped once, but like every weekend. I am at a loss for words. There was a certain point where it just went unbelievable, and like, apart from the turning into another person thing, it was so strange. I don't know. It was so strange. And then there was this one part where the main character, like, probably the author wanted to teach the reader something by having the stupidest main character possibly walking the earth, who didn't know, respect, or accept after being told that men are also getting raped, and that it's possible to get raped by a woman if you're a man. And it made me so angry. It made me so unbelievably angry, and it made me hate her so much. This book, it was... Anyway, okay, so a lot of... And then she jumped out the window. So, one thing before I end this, because, wow, it was very strange. So, her parents didn't... Oh, please stop talking. Her parents were not on her side, not even once. And her parents called her a slut and a whore and the worst things possible, like your own parents. I mean, there are parents like that. Don't get me wrong, there are really shitty parents out there. But this girl didn't have friends, didn't have good parents, she didn't have a support system at all. And I just find that very unbelievable. It was a very depressing book, and then she had this, I think she wanted to make her main character Femke, who is Anouk, who, as I said, is so confusing, but like Femke, she wanted to make her sympathetic, as if the whole being a victim of repeated rape didn't do the trick. She had this whole rescue thing going on, so basically there was a group of boys who were like, you either sleep with me and my friends whenever we want, or we make sure that all the other girls in the school get raped. And she just went with it. And then she spent like every weekend at this guy's house who was weirdly in love with her or not, because it was kind of, his parents are in Africa randomly. And it's just so weird. Like, I mean, he's 18, so whatever. But still. And he's basically her pimp. It is so strange. And it's always like repeated. She says, with my permission, against my will, which is still rape. And like, it's emphasized that she only does it, or is only okay with it, to protect the other girls in her school. I mean, I know rape culture is a problem. However, I don't think in Germany we have a rape culture. Still, rape is a problem, also in Germany, but that was just a little bit too much. And then this guy, who is her pimp, who is also weirdly in love with her for some reason, he stalks her and stuff. And in the end, it's like, it's painted a little bit like a good thing, because he kind of saves her from finds her after a very traumatic incident, and then brings her to the hospital. So, and it was weirdly phrased like, if he wouldn't have stalked me, maybe no one would have found me and brought me in hospital. It was strange, especially because I don't know, the writing style was a little bit fan fiction-y again, so I never really got a good grasp of the characters. I didn't really understand the motivations, apart from being a man, meaning he is the devil and is just blatantly evil and doesn't need a reason for that. And in between, I thought maybe the reason is that he is in love with her and she's not reciprocating, but then they kind of talk about it and it's like, okay, he's not in love with her, but then in the end it's like, yeah, he always has been in love with her. It is so strange. I don't know. Anyway, she is forced to sleep with this 13-year-old child. She doesn't do it. Obviously not for the right reasons, but for the, oh my god, they will probably hold this over me for the rest of my life and then I can't ever be free. I don't know. Anyway, she has a pistol in her bag that she got, and she's not, I mean, he's 13 years old. You would probably, like, I don't know, kick him. She doesn't. She just points the gun at this kid and he's peeing himself because he's so scared, and it's all so weird. Like, she has a gun. She could just walk back down, point the gun at the other three, and use the door. I don't know. She doesn't. She jumps out the window, and it's weirdly stated that it's like 5 meters high. Sorry if you hear something in the background. I don't know if it ever stops, so we just go on. She jumps out that window, and it is, I don't know why she had to state the height, because it would have been fine to just say she jumped out the window and then it wouldn't have been so weird that she's not hurt. But if you say like it's 5 meters high, and I just remember standing on like a 3-meter thing, looking down and being so scared that I couldn't jump and had to go back. And 5 meters is even higher. So I don't know, I'm not a physician. I talked to my roommate about it. She's also not a physician, but she studies sports or sports medicine, something like that. And she was like, if she is very sporty, she would probably be able to roll in a way that decreases the amount of injury to a minimum. But she isn't rolling, because the thing is, it's all very descriptive in this book. And she lands on her feet, I don't know, cracks her ankle, and then she falls like on her butt, but she first lands on her feet. And the thing is, I don't know if that's true, But I found it weird, so I talked to my roomie, and my roomie was like, yeah, probably she would have broken all her bones, or her leg bones would have gone up into her intestines, and it's very unlikely that she's jumping out a 5-meter window and then just getting up and running away. It's just very weird. And she didn't seem to have Googled that. Like, it's not a thing that she would have had to state exactly. She could have just made it vague, but now that she stated it, I had a sleepless night thinking about the possibility of that. And yeah, this book was weird. And yeah, basically, it wasn't just weird, it was also very depressing. It didn't have a happy end. And to be perfectly honest, maybe it's just because I didn't like it, but I feel like it has only the good ratings because of the shock value. The thing is, I read the Goodreads reviews, and a lot of them just said, oh, it's an important topic and it's good that people talk about it because they hope that this book could start a conversation, because it's like not a scientific book but a novel, and it's always a good thing. Like 13 Reasons Why did kind of start a conversation. Not sure, like I'm totally on board with we probably need a novel about that to get a conversation started, because rape is a problem, but I'm not on board with the whole having 500 pages detailed description of rape and breaking out of your skin and becoming another person, and it was all very meta. I feel like she had too many topics that were important to her that she wanted to include, so she did, and now it didn't make any sense at all. And then basically I spent 488 pages wondering what is going on, and then, big spoiler if you don't want to hear how it ends, click away now. So the end was that it never was Anouk, like it was always Femke, and she was just so traumatized by all the rape that happened to her that she got a psychosis and imagined being Anouk, even though she didn't have any reason to be Anouk since they haven't talked in 3 years. And also, if she didn't die, who pushed who, and why would Femke have pushed Anouk since she wanted to hug her? It's so confusing. It doesn't make any sense, and I feel like it's a little bit cheap to spend 400 something pages totally confusing and not giving any tips, and then in the end be like, haha, it was all imagination, so you can't criticize me now. It's a bit like the Joker film, where it's in the end like, oh, maybe he was all imaginary, we don't know, so don't critique it. That's just not how it works, and it didn't work for me. There is, however, an email address that you can mail your questions to. So I think probably the author got that it doesn't make sense, and she gave the readers the possibility to write an email. I didn't yet, because I was still processing and I have so much else to do, and it's just not a book that is so important to me that I really need the answer. I still find it a funny idea, so I might write that email at some point. If I do, I'll tell you, but no promises yet. I don't know. This was the weirdest book I read this month. It was weird in so many different stages that I don't know what to say, apart from it wasn't for me. I gave it 1 star, and what I just said is why. I just want to believe she had the best intention writing this book, but for me it just came across as a rape fantasy or a revenge fantasy or both, and I cannot. It was just so odd. videos. February. I'm on a roll. This is working with the whole monthly videos. Yes. And more wrap-up things in April.